Hey there. You like sharks? Well, with Aether Drift spoilers all around us, let's go ahead and make some of these commanders while we do have time, since technically the pre-order pricing for this commander is like $13, but until that card actually comes out, as far as I'm concerned, that price is a big ol' $0 So I want to go ahead and talk about this guy. This is Captain Howler, and he looks just a little bit nutty. Captain Howler is an Izzet and 2 Shark Pirate with Ward 2 and Pay 2 life. Copying from Valgavoth there, I guess. And whenever you discard one or more cards, target creature gets 2/0 until end of turn for each card discarded this way. And whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, you will then draw a card. So, alright, obviously we are going to want to make sure that that 2/0 makes it onto an evasive dude, and we want that dude to be able to deal damage to your opponent and give you some kind of benefit for casting spells. So here we have a bunch of evasive dudes that our commander is going to want to see. Our game plan is going to be to discard enough cards that our evasive dudes can deal lethal damage to our opponents. And, well, since we're going to be doing that primarily with spell casts, who else to run but Balmor, Battle Mage Captain? Whenever we cast an instant or a sorcery spell, he'll give 1/0 to all of our creatures and give them trample. Spellbound Dragon gets XO whenever we have a card that gets discarded based on its mana cost. Perfect synergy with the commander. Umara Mystic says we get 2/0 whenever we cast an instant spell or a wizard spell. Dragonauts gets 2/0 when we cast an instant or a sorcery spell. Prismari Apprentice gets 1/1 if we cast or copy an instant sorcery spell. It can't be blocked this turn as well. The 1/1 only happens if we cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, but unblockable is still good enough in my opinion. Cackling Drake is also great here. Its power is equal to the number of instant and sorcery spells we have in exile and in our graveyard, and whenever it touches the battlefield, we get to draw a card. Ghostly Pilferer is also wonderful here. Whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, we get to draw a card. And of course, we can discard cards to make sure this guy can't be blocked. Let's also add in a payoff for everything we're going to be doing by spellcasting by giving ourselves Kylox Visionary Inventor. It's got Menace and Ward 2 and Haste, and whenever it attacks, we can sack any number of other creatures and exile the top X cards of our library, where X is their total power, and then we can cast any number of instant or sorcery cards from among them without paying their mana costs. Because this is based on the total power of those cards, every single bit of power we feed into them with our commander will work with this ability, but we can also supplement that by just having a sheer amount of creatures available to us, and with that we have our secondary side of the deck, and that is going to be the tokens side of the deck. Cards that spawn tokens based on casting our 21 instants and 7 sorceries. Young Pyromancer making 1/1 red elemental tokens. Okiva making 1/1 red Phyrexians whenever we cast non-creature spells. Saheeli making 1/1 servos and also giving us a copy ability. Murmuring Mystic makes 1/1 birds when we cast instant or sorcery spells. Third Path Iconoclast gives us 1/1 colorless soldiers. Talran makes 2/2 drakes. Shark Typhoon makes XX sharks that are flying for whatever the mana cost of the spell we cast was. And Eris Roar of the Storm makes 4/4 dragons every time we cast specifically our second spell every turn. Those dragons also have prowess, which can lead to some very funky turns as well. So, since the name of the game is going to be casting some cards that make us discard cards and getting effects from them, we should probably talk about the draw engine of the deck, since that's going to be feeding most of what our commander does. Let's get into it. We've got a bulky 19-card draw package so that we can feed the shenanigans this commander wants us to be engaged in. We've got Desperate Ravings to draw 2 cards and discard a card at random because it's got Flashback. Thrill of Possibility to draw 2 cards and discard a card. Electric Revelation does the same thing, but it's also got Flashback. Wind Rider Wizard lets us do that draw discard thing every time we cast an instant sorcery or a wizard spell. Bonded Fetch lets us draw and discard whenever we want. Into the Night lets us discard all the cards in our hand, or any number of cards really, and then draw that many cards +1. Merfolk Looters, the same as Bonded Fetch, draw draw and discard. Dangerous Wager lets us discard our hand, then draw 2 cards. Use this when you've got 1 or no cards in hand for a quick refresh. Magmatic Insight lets us discard a land to draw 2 cards. Cathartic Reunion discards 2 to draw 3. Breakthrough lets us draw 4 cards, then choose X cards in our hand and discard the rest from it. Chart of Course lets us draw 2 cards, then discard a card, unless we've attacked this turn, in which case it's just a 2-mana draw 2. Krovikin Sorcerer lets us discard a non-black card, which is our whole deck, to draw a card. Rush of Inspiration is an MDFC that lets us draw a card, then discard a card at random. Decaying Time Loot lets us discard all the cards in our hand, then draw that many cards, and it's got Retrace, so we can use this multiple times a turn. Frantic Search allows us to draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, and untap 3 lands. Demand Answers lets us draw 2, discard 1, and Mary Reed and Bonnie has haste and lets us draw a card, then discard a card. And if that card is an island pirate or a vehicle, we will then make a treasure token, allowing us something that we can feed our extra lands into if we've drawn too many of them. And of course, our commander has a draw clause as well, so please don't forget that when you are playing this deck. That's a lot of draw plus discard effects. My only regret is that cards like Looter Ilkor are kind of non-Bowie in this deck, because Looter Ilkor gives you the draw discard after it's already calculated damage. If we had a way to give him First Strike, that wouldn't be a problem, but, you know, we don't really have that in these colors without trying to sacrifice some very important deck real estate. So, we need to go ahead and talk about how we're going to stop our opponents from winning the game while we are trying to draw and discard a bunch of stupid cards. We get to run a very thick 14-card removal and interaction package for this deck, and in an ideal world, every one of these would have a draw discard clause, but we can't really find that at our budget for every single card, so we have to make do with only a few of our cards doing that, like Refute, which can counter a spell, then draw us a card and discard a card. We also get some great staples like Abrade to blow up artifacts and creatures, Negate to get rid of any non-creature spell, Raven Form to get rid of any artifact or creature, Resculpt to do the same thing, Test of Talents to be effectively a second copy of Negate. It can also be used to stop Slime Against Humanity style decks, Keep Safe to counter any spell that targets a permanent that we control, like say our commander, Essence Scatter can counter a creature spell, Disruption Protocol can counter any spell, and we can tap say a treasure to make it cost 1 less, You Find the Villain's Lair can counter a spell or allow us to draw 2 and discard 2, Wash Away lets us counter any spell, or, you know, if we want to pay only 1 mana for it, we can counter a commander's spell. Is It Charm can counter any non-creature spell unless our opponent pays 2, hit a creature for 2, or let us draw 2, discard 2. And Prismari Command lets us make treasures, or draw and discard, or deal 2 damage to any target, or blow up an artifact. The one thing that we are bereft of at this particular budget is board wipes. Unfortunately, when you're playing Izzet at a budget, the board wipes you get access to are very, very limited. So we are opting not to run them and instead going for a more aggro strategy to become the reason a board wipe happens from somebody else. Now, as you upgrade this deck, you do get access to cards like Blasphemous Act, which are fantastic board wipes to slot in, so don't forget about that. And of course, at higher budgets, there are things like Cyclonic Rift that you can use to fill in these gaps as well. That all said, let's go ahead and get into the next section of the deck, which is, of course, our mana. We've got 11 cards that ramp us, with a few of these notably being very, very powerful, like Stormkiln Artist. It gets 1/0 for every artifact we control, not super important. What is important is that when we cast a spell, or, you know, copy a spell, we get to make a treasure token. Stormkiln Artist is an infinity engine all on his own, and at higher budgets, you can add cards like Berkey into this deck as well, to just storm off on your opponents and create an infinitely big Drake. Jace's Sanctum lets us scry whenever we cast instants of sorcery spells, but it also lowers their cost by 1. Arcane Signet, Sky Diamond, Fire Diamond, Izzet Signet, these are all your basic 2-mana rocks. Wayfarer's Bauble gives us access to ramp that is safer than anything else in the world, because it is land-based ramp. Goblin Electromancer, Storm Catch Mentor, Mocking Sprite, and Storm Skrillex all drop the cost of our instants and sorcery spells by 1, and in the case of the Storm Skrillex, he's also an evasive dude that gets 2/0 whenever we cast instant or sorcery spells. So he is pulling double duty for us, and he better be at that 5 mana cost. For lands, we're going to be running 9 islands and 8 mountains, as our deck does lean blue, and for dual lands, we have Exotic Orchard, Command Tower, Frostboil Snarl, Ferris Lake, Temple of Epiphany, and Izzet Boilerworks. The Temple for early game setting up, and the Izzet Boilerworks to reset utility lands. Speaking of lands we would want to reset, we've got a bunch of utility lands to get into. We'll go over them here in a minute. But for fetching lands, we have Escape Tunnel, Evolving Wilds, and Terramorphic Expanse, with Myriad Landscape being a fetching land that can ramp us, and Ash Barrens being a really great mana fixing land early in our games. But as for utility lands, oh boy, we have a bunch. Obviously, we've got Pit of Offerings in here to make sure that our opponent's graveyards are kept nice and clean. That's what the Izzet Boilerworks is in here to reset. But we also have the Lonely Sandbar, we have Desert of the Mindful, Forgotten Cave, Smoldering Crater, Desert of the Fervent, and Remote Isle. All of these are lands with cycling, which means these will trigger our Commander's ability and allow us to draw through our decks and get new cards. Also, funnily enough, the scan for this Remote Isle looks like there was a cat hair put on it. That's really weird. Just look at this scan for Remote Isle for a second and tell me that that's not a random cat hair on it. Thanks, Moxfield. That's really cute. Anyway, we also have Ominous Cemetery in here as a way to get rid of problematic creatures, and a Desolate Lighthouse as another way to draw cards and discard cards. The final utility land we're going to be running is the Cephalid Coliseum, which we can sacrifice to draw 3 cards and discard 3 cards, which we can definitely use with our Commander's ability. This thing can be really nuts by giving us 3 triggers of our Commander's ability. Or 1 trigger of it for 6 power. That all said, that is all the mana in our deck. And while the deck should be really straightforward to play, draw, discard, and punch people in the nuts, let's go ahead and do a quick gameplay demonstration to show you what we're trying to do here. As long as your opening hand has the ramp and the ability to be a little bit resilient, then I think your hand's going to be fine, because we have so much draw discard we can dig in for. With this opening hand, we have Arcane Signet, a couple islands, and a Temple of Epiphany, with a wash away to disrupt an opponent's problematic commander. Like, say somebody's got a commander that's part of an infinite combo, right? A Brea or something like that. Wash away definitely disrupts that for us. We have Eris Roar the Storm in here as well, which we can use a little later in the game with our commander, so I think we're in a good spot. So let's go ahead and draw our opening card, and we'll set the Temple of Epiphany down, and that's a Merfolk Looter. We definitely want that in our opening hand. We're going to move into the next turn, and we draw the Merfolk Looter. I think the correct thing to do is to skip the Arcane Signet and just play the Merfolk Looter right now, so we can start getting his benefits immediately. Move into turn 3, and we can play the island, and this is why we did the looter. We're just going to go ahead and pay 2, play the Arcane Signet, pay 2, play the Izzet Signet, and then on our opponent's turn, we'll tap the Merfolk Looter to draw a card and discard a card. The Storming Skrillex in here is probably what we want to keep in our hand, so the Desperate Ravings gets to go away, as it does have flashback. We move into turn 4, and let's go ahead and pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's get that Storm Skrillex out, and let's go ahead and... Oh, we want to keep everything in our hand. But I do want to tap the Merfolk Looter for a chance. There's a Desert of the Fervent here. I think we might be able to sacrifice this Prismari command for now, and put the Desert on the battlefield tapped so that we don't lose a land drop. We move into turn 5, and we drew Saheeli, so we're going to pay 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go ahead and get the captain on the board, and let's tap Merfolk Looter to draw 1 card and discard a card. We draw the Prismari Apprentice, and we already have an Evasive Dude out, so let's go ahead and toss him for now. And that is 1 draw discard we've done, so we're going to get 1 trigger on Storm Skrillex. He's going to swing at somebody for 4 and draw us a card. And we draw Talran with that. Let's assume on our opponent's turn that we're going to have to use the Wash Away to protect ourselves, and that means if we look at our graveyard, we now have 1, 2, 3 different instant or sorceries in the grave, all with different mana values, meaning that Eris is currently going to be discounted by 6, so she'll only cost us 4 mana if we want to cast her. Let's move into the next turn. and we draw a Smoldering Crater. So right now we have a couple of options. We can either play the Shark Typhoon and set up for a following turn, or we can start our shenanigans with our captain. I think the right thing to do is to fish for our next card and see what we get. We get Young Peasy. We don't necessarily need Young Peasy right now, so we're going to toss her, and we are going to tap all of these so that we can get the Shark Typhoon online. This does put a target on our back, but I think we're in a fine spot. That means we get to add 2-0 to our Skrillex. Let's go ahead and swing our Skrillex at somebody, bop them for drawing us a card. We drew Okiva. Let's drop the Smoldering Crater on the board, and now we'll move into turn 7. We've drawn Lonely Sandbar. Let's go ahead and tap the Merfolk Looter to draw a card and discard. We don't need that Fire Diamond. That's going to put 2-0 on Storm Skrillex. Let's go ahead and... let's see. Shark Typhoon triggers whenever we cast a non-creature spell. So we can actually pay 1, 2, 3, and we can play Saheeli and immediately get ourselves a Shark token. So let's go ahead and get one of these nice 3/3 sharks out on the board. And if we use her ability, target artifact gives a copy of another artifact or creature we control until end of turn. We don't need that ability right now. So I think we go ahead and crack our Lonely Sandbar to draw a card. And there's a land we can play for the turn. There we go. There's a mountain. And we can pay 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's go ahead and put Eris Roar the Storm on the board for a following turn. Skrillex will punch and give us a draw, and then we'll move on to turn 7 to do some shenanigans. Let's start by tapping the Merfolk Looter to draw 1 card and discard a card. As of right now, I think the mountain goes away. That's going to put 1 instance of our commander's ability on Skrillex. We're then going to pay 1, crack the Forgotten Cave out of our hand to draw a card, and that's going to put another instant of our commander's ability onto this shark. The shark now hits for 5. The Storm Skrillex hits for 4. We want more discards, though, so let's go ahead and get more discards out there. Bonded Fetch touches the board, tapping to draw and discard a card. It draws the Crackling Drake. I don't know. I think I don't want the Crackling Drake right now, in all honesty, as much as I would like that ability. So let's... Okiva is probably a bit much right now, though. We'll get rid of Okiva so we keep a lower mana hand. We want to hold on to the negate no matter what, though. So that will give us another instance of our commander's ability. That's going to go on to Eris with Flying and Prowess. So Eris is going to hit somebody for 6. The Shark hits for 5. That's 11 damage. Storm hits for 4. That's going to be a grand total of 15 damage to somebody, and will draw us 1, 2, 3 cards. And, of course, because we did attack, we get to pay 2 and do Chart a Course to draw a card. This will get, or draw 2 cards. This will give us 1 instance of Shark Typhoon, which will give us a nice 2/2 shark that we can use for blocking, and will give us a 1/1 servo with Saheeli. So we've got a servo we can now make use of for a follow-up turn. Chart a Course goes away, and we get to hold on to our cards as they are. Because we made the servo, if our opponents cast any spell we don't like, we can tap the servo into the cost of Disruption Protocol to stop whatever spell that they cast, and then we move on to our turn. By stopping their spell, we also make another servo, and we make another shark. This one is a 2/2 as well. Now we get to basically try to go into our deck as much as humanly possible. We've got a mountain here. Let's go ahead and play that. Let's tap the Bonded Fetch to draw and discard. That'll give 2/0 to this shark. We'll tap the Merfolk Looter to draw and discard. That'll give 2/0 to this shark. Let's see here. We got Jace's Sanctum here. We could use, I think now we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We play the Crackling Drake to draw a card. That's Demand Answers, which we can use to spawn a shark, spawn a servo. These two can't attack right now, but we get to discard a card in doing this. The Electromancer goes away. We actually only had to tap 1 mana for that, actually, because of how because of our Screeks at the moment, actually. So Demand Answers does its thing. It draws us 2 cards, and that's going to give us 2/0 onto, say, Eris. Eris also has Prowess, so Prowess is going to give her 1/1. So she's hitting for 7 right now. Let me go ahead and denote where their damages are so I don't forget, because otherwise I will start forgetting things. Long Rivers Pool's a counterspell we can use if things get dicey for us. So as of right now, we've done 2 discards. I think we want another discard. So we're gonna knock Saheeli down by 2, and we're gonna turn this servo right here into a copy of Merfolk Looter, so we can tap it, draw a card, and discard a card. There goes the island. We're gonna add that 2 power to the Skrillex, which has already gained 2-0, so it's currently at 6 power right now, where we are at. Let's go ahead and say as well that our opponents have a problematic spell or a problematic card on the board. We're going to abrade that card away, whatever that card may be. That's going to give Eris another bit of power, Storm Skrillex another bit of power, and that's going to, of course, create another Servo token from Saheeli and another Shark token from the Shark Typhoon. Now we have 2 mana available that we can use for negate, so when we swing in, we will have everything we need to hurt our opponents. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 creatures modified by our commander, and we have a grand total of 8, 16... what is this? 21, 28 damage going at our opponents as of right now. And because 4 of these creatures were modified by our commander, we will draw 4 cards. And let's go ahead and say that we have to use negate to protect our board. And that is fine. We do that, it spawns more. You get the idea of where we're at right now. You get the idea of where we're at right now. We draw and discard and do all kinds of things, and we have Into the Night for a follow-up turn. So when the next turn comes up, if our opponents are not dead by then, we cast Into the Night, we discard our whole hand away, and we add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We add 14 power onto a creature, and then we draw a new hand of 7. And then we see how much more damage we can do to our opponents. Hell, for shits and giggles, let's see what that would even translate to, right? Damage-wise. So Into the Night is cast. This will give us multiple bits of our commander's ability. That's going to add 2 power to the Skrillex, 1 power to Eris, and of course, it's going to make a 4/4 Shark token. We're not going to worry with the Shark tokens right now. Let's go ahead and say that our Crackling Drake gets all of the power from that. So our Crackling Drake gets 14 power, and our Crackling Drake also has power from stuff in our grave, which we'll calculate here in a bit. We're basically just theory crafting what happens when we go bonkers with our draw discard. We tap the Bondage Fetch to draw and discard. That's going to add more. We'll just add it all to the Drake for giggles. Why not? Let's just see how big we can make the Drake. We draw and discard with our next creature. We then pay 2 mana to cycle our Desert of the Mindful to discard. That's going to give more power to the Drake, more power to the Drake. We're going to use Saheeli again. Why not? Let's go ahead and use Saheeli, turn a servo into a copy of the Bondage Fetch to draw and discard. That gives us the Is It Boiler Works. That makes the Drake another 20. It's got 22 power right now as its bare minimum. Land for turn is Desolate Lighthouse, which we can then tap in order to draw a card and discard a card. That card is Refute, which we can use to protect ourselves if we tapped our mana correctly. Let's pretend we tapped our mana correctly. And we get to discard our Frostboil Snarl there. That's going to add even more to the Crackling Drake. And because there's currently 11 instants or sorceries in our grave, then we add 11 to the Crackling Drake. So the Drake alone swings for 35 right now. This is not the important turn. This is the silly haha turn. We cast Refute to protect ourselves from like a fog or some shit. That gives the Drake another draw and discard ability, and that gives it 2 more power, and another instant made it into the grave, so that gives it another power. The Drake is punching you for 38. That's not counting what all the other things on the board are swinging for at this particular moment. It's stupid. It's stupid. It's very, very dumb. If you ever wanted a chance to play Combat Storm, that's basically what you're getting with this deck. But what happened if we had a little more money to throw into it, huh? If you are upgrading this deck, one of the strongest pieces you can add into it is Birgi, God of Storytelling. As you are upgrading, you can lean further and further into the Is It Storm archetype, and Birgi is wonderful at allowing you to do that. Also, draw and discard is uniquely a red mechanic. It is something that red is very, very good at, so that red mana will always be able to go very, very far, especially when you're casting cards like Wheel of Misfortune to make every player, it's a complicated complicated card, but effectively some people discard their hands and draw 7. That's really what it boils down to. More red draw discard can be found in Reforge the Soul. Each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. Big Score lets you discard 2 and draw 2 and make 2 treasures. Unexpected Windfall is, well, the exact same card. I don't know why this exists. Pirate's Pillage is, again, the same card. This one's a source. I don't know why this exists. Then there's Faithless Looting to let you draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. Fiery Encore to add the actual Storm mechanic onto all of that as well. Collective Defiance allows us to have a thing that will cause us to discard a card from all the cards in our hand, then draw that many cards. Deal 4 damage to a creature if we escalate it. Deal 3 damage to an opponent or a planeswalker. Just pick your modes on this or add them all up. The card is really, really good no matter what you do. Draw discard is also found in Sorcerer class, which can let us lean further into the Storm mechanic. And Windfall is another way to make everybody discard a bunch of cards and draw a bunch of cards. And, well, you can't go wrong with Ral. He's got a -3 to draw 3, discard 2, but whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we get to put loyalty counters on him, and we can make red otters with prowess. You can ignore his +1 ability by just storming through your deck, honestly. That's just a thing you get to do. And, well, that's it for everything in the deck. I think that you're going to find that this commander is very powerful. It's going to feel like sort of a brawly Niv Mizzet deck. And, well, if that's your style, then hey, hopefully you'll find this deck nice, fun, and engaging. If not, then, well, that's entirely a you issue. Sometimes the Izzet decks are not for everybody. Spell slingy nonsense, draw discard nonsense, stormy nonsense may not be your cup of tea, and if it's not, then there's nothing wrong with that. That's just something that you can figure out on your own. I don't know why I'm extending this part of the video so long. Am I self-conscious about telling Storm players that they are, in fact, people? Because they're not. Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravelern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Agamotto, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full-time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full-time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one, hopefully.